Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and welcome to my ultimate guide to Tingyun. Tingyun is a Harmony Lightning character that specializes in playing as a hypercarry support. A hypercarry support is a character who replaces a damage dealer in your team in order to beef up and empower the other damage dealer that you have present. She's especially powerful in 1.0 with characters like Yanqing as well as Relic. In this video, we're going to be covering her rotation, how to build her Eidolons, as well as light cones and everything you need to know to bring out her full potential. Tingyun is a 4-star character, but many people jokingly call her a 5 or a 6-star character due to her flexibility in combat. She has a lot of tricks up her sleeve, and she's also a very safe pick to pull, get Eidolons for, or build on your account, as she is a damage-focused character, and she's already present in the hardest and highest content in the game, Memory of Chaos. As a damage-focused character as well, I doubt she's going anywhere anytime soon, as she's going to be a great assistance in 3-starring the Memory of Chaos, which is the ultra endgame and the objective of everyone looking to maximize the potential of their account. Tingyun's basic attack is a single target lightning damage nuke that generates 1 skill point and deals 1 break unit of lightning toughness. Now, unlike other supports though and other characters, Tingyun's kit revolves around boosting up her basic attacks so that they can deal a little bit more damage, meaning that unlike other supports, she actually will contribute a reasonable amount of damage, and she can be a pretty big help when you're trying to progress in the Memory of Chaos in meeting those damage check marks. Tingyun's skill, Soothing Melody, costs 1 skill point to cast and grants 2 separate effects to an ally that you target. Upon casting, Soothing Melody applies Benediction to that ally. Benediction is a buff which, while active, will have those 2 aforementioned effects, the first of which is an increased attack buff. This attack buff is a little bit special though. You can see here my Tingyun increases the target with Benediction's attack by 37%. It's worth noting this 37% increase affects the base attack of the character. But there's a second line here that states it can only be up to 20% of Tingyun's current attack. Notice that it says current attack. So we're increasing the character's base attack based off of Tingyun's current attack. You can view the base attack of your character who will be targeted with Benediction by checking the More Stats panel here. You can see that my Sele has 1062 attack. That means applying Benediction to Sele here will grant her 392 bonus attack, but only if Tingyun has a high enough attack herself to be able to support that level of buffing. The key here with Benediction is ensuring that your Tingyun has enough attack herself in order to enable the full effects of her Blessing and Benediction. Now, if we wanted to actually work out how much attack our Tingyun would need to grant the full benefit to Sele, it would actually be 1964 attack in order to enable the full buff. Now, I'm not going to bore you guys with formulas, so I'm going to cut straight to the chase. At maximum level with all traces unlocked and the best in slot light cone, the character who has the most attack is Himiko with a 5-star light cone fully maxed out at level 80 on both of them. The absolute maximum amount of attack that you're going to need on your Tingyun in 1.0 is 2638 attack at E0. At E5, when you get level 12 of the skill, you're going to need 2686 attack to fully bring out Tingyun's potential and have no opportunity to not get full effect. Now, depending on the character that you're buffing and the caliber of light cone that you're using, this will be lower in a lot of cases. But if you wanted to have a foolproof and fail-safe Tingyun, having roughly 2650 attack is pretty much going to cut it for 99.9% of scenarios. Now you might be thinking that's a massive amount of attack. You don't need it all right away, as characters have lower base attack the lower level they are, but even at max level, you might be a little concerned. Don't worry though, once you get into combat, you're going to trigger a ton of attack buffs. A good example of this is the Fleet of the Ageless Planar set. Chances are 3 of your characters on your team of 4 are going to be running this, and that's already an additional 24% increased attack for your Tingyun that you won't have in your character sheet here. So it's not too hard to hit the maximum value with good gear in the endgame once you have everything leveled up. The second portion of Benediction is a special on hit effect. I'm going to read you guys the ability so that you guys get a full understanding, and then we'll explain it. When the ally with Benediction attacks, they will deal additional lightning damage equal to 30% of that ally's attack for 1 time. The way this actually plays out in reality is that any ally buffed with Benediction, whenever they perform an offensive action that hits, they will trigger the 30% lightning damage in this case. It can go higher, and that will happen pretty much every single time, but it can only happen once per offensive action. So even if you do a massive AoE attack that hits 5 enemies, it will only trigger on 1 of them. But the cool thing is about this ability is that it will trigger every offensive action, but only once. So on basic attacks, skills, ultimates, as well as follow-up attacks. Some good examples of special interactions with the follow-up attacks are characters like Ting. If he uses his skill and then procs the follow-up attack straight after, he will double apply the lightning damage. Clara is another good example. Whenever she counterattacks, she will also apply the lightning damage every single time, in addition to her normal skills and basics. This makes Soothing Melody particularly powerful and far stronger on certain other characters compared to most of the characters. It's also worth noting that Soothing Melody's damage is actually based off of the attack of the person who is buffed, making it far more powerful. It can also critically strike based off of the attacker's critical strike, not Tingyun's. And in addition to that, it does not deal break damage and is still considered lightning. So buffing up Ting with Benediction is not going to allow his Ice Planar Sphere to increase the damage of the lightning portion of the attack, which he will be triggering. The last thing to note about Soothing Melody is that it can only be active on 1 target and lasts for 3 turns total. Tingyun's ultimate amidst the rejoicing clouds costs 130 energy and will grant 50 energy to the target of her choice. This cannot be modified by energy recharge of Tingyun or the receiver, meaning it will always be a flat 50. In addition to that, it also grants increased damage to the target for 2 turns. Tingyun's talent Violent Sparknado reads a little bit complicated, but essentially what it does is it will deal extra damage whenever Tingyun basic attacks. This damage will be equal to 36% of the attack of the character that has Benediction on them. So if your Sele has 2000 attack, you'll deal 36% of that every time Tingyun attacks. It's worth noting this isn't as powerful as you might think, as it still uses all of Tingyun's multipliers outside of the attack stat, meaning that Tingyun won't get any benefit from the carry's attack stats like critical strike rating, critical strike damage, or increased elemental damage. That will all still need to come from Tingyun. Tingyun's technique Gentle Breeze is one of the most powerful techniques currently in the game. It allows her to regenerate 50 energy every single use. In the Memory of Chaos, the Advanced Forgotten Hall mode, you're granted 5 technique points, and generally you only have 1 battle to deal with. You only have 4 characters, and Tingyun can use her technique twice, meaning she can generally start every single fight with her ultimate active, as using the technique twice will grant her the full ultimate energy needed. This can give you very powerful starts, meaning that she is going to be one of the best characters for bringing for those really explosive cycle clears. Tingyun's first bonus ability, Nourished Joviality, is incredibly strong. It grants her 20% increased speed for 1 turn every time she uses her skill. This will heavily influence the best rotation for Tingyun, and we'll get to that when we cover the rotation section. Her second bonus ability is definitely not a high priority, but it gives her 40% increased basic attack damage, further doubling down on her offensive supporting nature. Her final bonus ability, Jubilant Passage, is by far her most powerful and will grant her 5 energy every single turn, making it so that she can access her ultimate far more frequently than without it. Overall, this is going to drastically improve your Tingyun's rotation as well as her ultimate output. When leveling up Tingyun's traces, prioritize her skill first and foremost. It is by far her biggest benefit, and you want to max it out first. Then comes the ultimate next in priority. It'll give you more damage and is also a great multiplier. The last two can be completely neglected in favor of other characters, but when you want more damage from Tingyun's basics and to want to try and push her a little bit further, you can grab Violent Sparknado as well as her basic attack, but the other two are far more important. The order of unlocks for Tingyun's bonus abilities are Jubiliant Passage first and foremost, it's her best one, though it is Ascension 6 so you may not be able to get it straight away. Next up is Nourished Joviality, and finally, you don't have to, but it is an option, you can also get this bonus ability here for a bit of extra basic attack damage. It's also worth noting that the increased attack damage traces here can also assist you with getting to the high attack requirement needed to fully unlock the potential of Tingyun's skills. One of Tingyun's greatest strengths is that she can provide as much or more damage than a secondary DPS in a team. The reason it's particularly powerful though is that Tingyun can do all this while spending no skill points due to her skill point neutral rotation. In addition to that, if things get really tough, she can actually play as a skill point positive unit for a time being or depending on the speed of your carry. In the endgame, after acquiring the Jubiliant Passage bonus ability as well as a plus 15 gold energy recharge rope, Tingyun has 2 rotations on the table for her. The first of which is a really big and efficient damaging rotation, which involves her alternating between using her basic and skill on an ally. Start out with the skill to ensure that they have the buff on them, and then alternate going backwards and forwards between using basic skill, and use the ultimate whenever it's available and suitable for your damaging carry. This rotation maximizes uptime of Nourished Joviality and also ensures that you're going to manage maximum ultimates by fitting everything into a nice tight window of pretty much getting an ultimate every 4 actions. However, this won't always be an option for Tingyun, as it will really allow her only to be a skill point neutral support. The reason this is an issue is sometimes you're going to need those skill points for other characters, namely a healer or a tank to use their abilities. In the case that this is needed, or your carry needs some skill points of their own, Tingyun may need to change up her rotation slightly and employ a skill basic rotation. This can work and will lower the overall uptime of your benediction on your carry, but that's a small price to pay in order to be able to survive and execute the fight correctly. So this will also be another option, and you can choose between the two and alternate on the fly however you see fit. But just know that the first rotation, which is skill basic, is a far superior damaging option, and the other one should only be employed if you absolutely need the skill points available for your other characters. Before unlocking Jubiliant Passage and acquiring the Golden Energy Recharge Rope, your rotation is going to be largely the same and your choice is going to be the same as well. You'll just be getting less ultimates overall. Before entering battle, ensure you assess the technique points available to you. Tingyun can choose to use 1 technique point or 2, depending on your choice. It will always be correct to use 2 if they're available and you don't need to conserve them, but in the event that you have 2 enemies to fight, it might be better to go ahead and only use 1 technique on Tingyun, as she still will be able to activate her ultimate on the first turn, but she won't be able to gain as much energy to further accelerate combat on the following ones. So you can use 1 and it's just fine, 2 is beneficial, but 1 will get the job done. When in battle, ensure that you never overcap Tingyun's energy. She is able to use her ultimate pretty much at all times, and there should always be a valid target or a way to get to a valid target. Starting at the battle, it's almost always correct to use your ultimate on a damaging character, and you should be focusing most of your efforts on buffing up that damaging character. However, there are going to be times when you're in a seriously sticky situation, and that situation might call for you to use your ultimate on either your healer or your shielder. Some good examples of this are ultimating Natasha, Bailu, or Japad when you know that there is a big hit coming in and you're sure that that hit is going to kill someone on your team. It makes way more sense to use the ultimate of Tingyun to save somebody than to just boost up damage in that scenario. But otherwise, you should go ahead and be using it whenever you can on your damaging carry. In addition to that, always try and maintain Blessing and the overall Benediction buff on your main damaging character as well. It's very easy to track Benediction using the counter down below. Should definitely refer to it whenever possible. 3 charges here mean that the carry has 3 actions with that buff. It's also worth noting that carries who have Benediction on them will only consume a charge of Benediction every real turn that they have, meaning using my Yangqing's ultimate here is not going to consume a charge of Benediction because it's not a real turn, it's a bonus action. This is particularly relevant with characters like Sele, who string together massive strings of bonus actions using resurgence triggers. It's only when your character starts and ends a full turn that you will lose a stack of benediction, meaning things like ultimates as well as follow-up attacks as well as bonus actions from stuff like Sele will not make you lose any charges of benediction, making it an incredible buff and very easy to maintain, especially using the basic skill combination. Now, while there's characters that don't consume much of benediction, there are actually characters that do consume an excessive amount of charges of it, and don't play the most friendly with Tingyun's buffs. A good example of a character that doesn't play the nicest with Tingyun is Su Shang, and the reason is that she just consumes a ton of charges of benediction every single rotation. You can see that Tingyun's blessing down here has 3 charges currently, and we can see that it's Su Shang's turn and she's about to use her ultimate. If we use the skill here, that will consume 1 charge, which we'll go ahead and see at the end here, and then after she uses the ultimate and gains a new advanced action forward, she's going to go ahead and consume a 2nd charge, meaning that she is a character that consumes a lot more of Tingyun's resources and will cause Tingyun to need to refresh the buffs a lot faster, meaning that it's a lot harder to access the skill points you might need for a character that is already very skill point hungry like Su Shang. The current biggest offenders of characters who consume Tingyun's buffs a lot are of course Su Shang, but also any sort of combination of Tingyun with Bronya. If you use the advance forward on Bronya, in accompaniment with Tingyun, you are going to be chewing through the blessing at record rates. So definitely keep that in your mind when you are constructing teams with Tingyun and either of those characters and future characters who advance their action forward or move very quickly. When playing Tingyun in a conservative fashion, trying to conserve as many skill points as possible, refer to the blessing tracker down here, which will show you how many charges are left on your buff. You should always aim for 100% uptime when trying to conserve skill points when running Tingyun versus maximum efficiency and output of the ultimates. In order to do this, you can use this tracker down here in combination with the turn tracker to see whether or not you should have to reapply the buffs. So in the case here on the turn tracker, when Tingyun gets her turn, there's 2 questions you need to ask. Can I basic or can I skill here? What your decision is going to be based on what the turn tracker shows. So in this case, we have 1 charge left of benediction or the blessing here, and we have 1 guaranteed use of Su Shang here. So we're going to be just fine here in order of skill points and using the basic here. So we're going to go ahead and use the basic. But if we had 0 charges left on our blessing here and Su Shang was going to move again, we'd want to refresh that so that Su Shang could get the buff. You will also need to plan around other advanced forward and mechanics like that which are similar. So if Su Shang, for example, was about to get her ultimate and she was going to get that, which she actually will this turn, we would want to reapply the blessing so that she could have the blessing for both her ultimate, her skill, and the other skill that she'll gain afterwards. Planning as such will maximize the opportunities that you're going to get and the damage potential of your Tingyun support. The last combat tip I have for you guys is going to be in regards to the Dance light cone. This is one of the best light cones for Tingyun, and there is some combat stuff which you need to know about it. So when you use this light cone, every time you use your ultimate, you're going to advance all allies' actions forward by 20%. The best way to use this is actually during the enemy's turn and not during your own turn, as if you use it, for example, right now during Tingyun's turn, she won't get the benefit of the advancement herself because it is currently her turn and she doesn't have any action value to advance. This means that you should use it during an enemy's turn to try and interrupt them and get that advance forward and move your entire team up. How that looks is as follows. We'll use Tingyun's skill here and then we'll interrupt the enemy with the ultimate. So they're going to go ahead and go here in a second and we will interrupt it, and you can see the turn gauge here. Everyone will move up and we will then have the maximum benefit from Dance. So you can see that our entire turn has gone up here and now we'll gain a lot more benefit from that. Try and use it as such. It cannot always happen that way and you may need to use it during Tingyun's turn or another character's turn, but overall try and do it during the enemy's turn to get the maximum benefit possible. Alright, now that we have a very good understanding of Tingyun's kit and rotation, let's get into her best in slot light cone options, as well as her relics. Tingyun has a lot of options for light cones, and you really can't go wrong with any of them if you have them already leveled on your account. However, a few of them are better than others. After Tingyun gets her Ascension 6 Trace, which grants her additional energy recharge every single turn, you don't really need to invest in any energy recharge on light cones, but before then it can be a reasonable option. For that reason, we'll talk about a few options that do involve that, but just know that you don't need to use energy recharge after you get that Ascension 6 talent, and if you do want to use it, the only thing you'll really be gaining is a sneaky extra ultimate and action earlier if you are subject to hits or randomly get a kill with Tingyun. For 3-star options, the best in-slot option after you get Ascension 6 and the energy recharge rope is going to be Chorus. If you don't have the energy recharge rope already, or the Ascension 6 meshing of cogs is an option to get the energy you need. For 4 stars, you have a lot of options. The free-to-play option, past and future, isn't necessarily bad, but isn't great either. You'd much prefer to use something else, and I'd almost always go with Chorus over that light cone if you can take the stat hit, which comes from going down to a 3-star. In terms of non-free-to-play options, we have some very strong things on the table. If you need energy recharge, Memories of the Past is a strictly better meshing of cogs if you have it at a reasonable superimposition level. But again, Tingyun isn't particularly hungry for energy, so it's definitely not going to be a high priority. The two ones to look out for are going to be Carve the Moon, Weave the Clouds, which you can acquire from the Battle Pass, which will grant Tingyun an additional buff for the team, which can be pretty strong, but isn't as powerful as the other cone here, which we're going to be talking about, which is Dance, Dance, Dance. This is probably Tingyun's best in slot 4-star option, as it does provide an immense bonus for the entire team, and it's not just numerical, it's also mechanical. It'll grant your whole team faster effects and actions, which will contribute to you outpacing the enemy by a substantial amount, getting you more control over the battle and also faster breaks to avoid very dangerous mechanics. A player who is using Dance 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 effectively, especially at high superimposition levels, will definitely see a lot of success with Tingyun, and it is my opinion that it is probably the best slot for her on a 4-star option, as it doesn't just provide damage, it does have that, but it also provides a lot of utility. The 5-star light cone belonging to Bronya, but the battle isn't over, isn't bad on Tingyun, but similar to the free-to-play light cone, it's also not great, as it only applies the 30% more damage increase to the ally who is next taking action. This is particularly good on Bronya, as it guarantees the next ally who is buffed to be the one taking action, but that is not the case for Tingyun. In addition to that, the 10% energy recharge rate listed is also kind of wasted on Tingyun, as you have more than enough energy already. There may be some sneaky breakpoints you can achieve with a maxed out energy recharge rope, the sprightly Von Whack, as well as a high superimposition of this light cone, but it's not really applicable for the majority of players, so this isn't a light cone I recommend for Tingyun personally, as you can't really get the full benefit, and I think that overall Dance 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 will allow you a few more options, but the battle isn't over. If you have Bronya, it's fair to say that this light cone belongs on her and not Tingyun. If that's all you have though, and you do want to use it, go ahead and use it, as it will grant you a few skill points, and if it lines up perfectly, you can also get the damage buff from it. And as mentioned, there is maybe some sneaky breakpoints to get even more ultimates, but those are very, very difficult to achieve. Overall, my recommendations are for everyone with the cones active on 4-star, Dance 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 is the priority and best. Second place, Carve the Moon, Weave the Clouds. Then Chorus is likely in third. If you have some energy problems, Memories of the Past and meshing of cogs are there if you need them. When gearing up your Tingyun, look for the following sets. So in terms of body armor, helmet, gloves, and boots, the best set bonus from my perspective is the Musketeer of Wildwheat. It provides 12% increased attack for Tingyun, which is much needed to maximize her benediction buff. In addition to that, it also provides 6% increased speed, which is particularly good for Tingyun as she is a support, and will allow her to maximize her rotations, as well as ultimates for the team, which is definitely what supports are aiming to do. There is an alternative option which some players may consider, which is the Eagle of Twilight line. It may be better in some super min-max scenarios, but people are still figuring this one out, and it will be very niche if it is better. Overall, I'd recommend Musketeer of Wildwheat, and it's the one I'm personally going to be using on my Tingyun. For planar ornament sets, you can't really go wrong with Fleet of the Ageless. It's incredibly stamina efficient to farm, being paired with one of the best DPS planar sets as well, and it's one that you're going to have a lot of, and ones which are very good itemized as well. Fleet of the Ageless provides max HP, but also max attack for Tingyun. Not only Tingyun though, it also applies to the entire team, doubling down on her buffing capabilities while also giving her a lot more attack to reach those bit addition breakpoints. Some players may want to entertain looking and experimenting with the sprightly Von Whack. If you can reach some very specific energy recharge breakpoints, you may be able to accelerate the ultimates available to Tingyun in a fight, but this is neither here nor there, and it's going to be very niche and only interact with future light cones which aren't announced and released yet, or light cones currently with very high superimposition levels. For general purpose gameplay, use a 4-piece Musketeer and Wild Wheat and a 2-piece Fleet of the Ageless, but definitely get a bit spicy and experiment with the Eagle of Twilight line as well as the sprightly Von Whack if you're a bit of a theory crafter. When looking for main stats on Tingyun's relics, scout out the following. For the helmet and gloves, of course, you're forced to get flat HP and flat attack. On the body armor, look for percentage attack increase, as you really need to maximize the attack on Tingyun for benediction. On the boots, you'd love to have speed. It is by far the best stat for supports and you want to maximize it across the board. But speed boots can be a little bit rare. Prioritize speed first and foremost, but if you can't get your hands on it, you can use attack percentage in the interim, but just be aware you want to replace it as fast as possible with speed. On the planar sphere, pick up attack percentage, and on the link rope, you want energy recharge rate, as it is going to affect your rotation dramatically and increase the amount of ultimates you can perform. But it is again quite rare. If you can't get your hands on energy recharge rope, go ahead and use attack in the interim, but prioritize getting that energy recharge rope ASAP. You can even use a purple one. As always, remember that main stats are very, very important and should definitely be taking priority. However, as a support, Tingyun may be very interested in activating the 4-piece Wild Wheat and the 2-piece Planar Sphere set earlier than usual on characters, so you can skimp on her gear a little bit to reshuffle things and activate both of those sets, as they will grant her a lot of what she's looking for anyway, which is attack and speed. Now, once you have your sets all online and you have all of the primary stats satisfied, which you're looking for, which we just discussed, it's time to look for substats. The best substat for Tingyun is going to be speed. Like all supports, she wants to go faster and she wants to act more often. Look for it wherever possible and get as much as possible wherever you can. The faster, the better, the more, the better. After you have as much speed as possible on every single slot though, look for attack percentage next, as you really want to satisfy that big attack requirement and make sure that Tingyun is capable of supporting any character in the game at any time however you want. After you've hit that attack breakpoint though, and you have speed wherever you can, next up is to focus on defenses. Defenses are going to be good, as Tingyun is a 4-star as she has pretty low base stats compared to some other 5-star characters. Beefing her up can increase her survivability and viability in endgame. So you can look for HP, defense, and effect hit resistance with your remaining substats, but it's definitely not a priority, and definitely look for speed as well as attack percentage if you need them first and foremost. Tingyun is an immensely powerful character at Eidolons 0 and has everything that she needs right out of the box, and her kit is very, very complete. However, Eidolons also do offer some pretty interesting benefits and further empower her abilities to buff allies. Tingyun's Eidolon 1 Windfall of Lucky Springs adds an extra effect to her skill Benediction. When a blessed ally or buffed ally uses their ultimate while they are buffed, they will gain a 20% increase speed boost for 1 turn. This is very, very strong as it actually accelerates your carry's rotation even more and synergizes very well with Tingyun's already powerful ultimate boosting capabilities. Now, there are some downsides to this Eidolon though. If you're a person who min-maxes a character's speed specifically around skill point management, meaning you've just got enough skill points to run your character and have them use their skill every turn, or you're someone who is lining up specific breakpoints of speed with certain buffs, certain ultimates, or other things, this can be a demerit for Tingyun. But for general case gameplay and players who have a pretty well-rounded composition and enough skill points to spare, this is a massive buff and a massive thing in the right direction here, and it's going to be a big, big increase. However, you will want to use this somewhat situationally. Interrupting an enemy's turn with the ultimate is actually not the most efficient way to use this. Ideally, you would use this on your carry's turn, so you would use your ultimate when it's their turn, meaning you'll get the full value out of the 20% speed boost on the following turn. Tingyun's Eidolon 2 gainfully gives, givingly gains, grants an on-kill effect to Benediction. Allies blessed with Benediction will gain 5 additional energy on defeating an enemy. This isn't a massive deal, but it does synergize very well with specific characters, namely Sele, who specializes in kill streaks and chaining together ultimates to get a ton of extra bonus actions, giving an extra synergy to Tingyun and Sele, which is definitely welcome. But overall, this Eidolon won't make too much of an impact on gameplay, at least right now in 1.0. Tingyun's Eidolon 4 jovial versatility is a ginormous mega buff to her skill's damaging component. The lightning portion of Tingyun's skill is normally capping out around 40% of a blessed ally's attack on hit, and that is the base damage that it provides. Jovial versatility increases that base damage from 40 to 60%, which is a 50% damage increase to the lightning component of Tingyun's skill, and this is a big deal, as many characters can trigger that lightning component multiple times, as we've already discussed, making this a big boost to Tingyun's buffing potential. Tingyun's 6th Eidolon, Peace Brings Wealth to All, is immensely powerful when paired with the right character. In Memory of Chaos, every character starts with 50% of their energy in the battle, and Tingyun can get her ultimate on the first turn using her technique, as we've already discovered. A character like Sele has an ultimate cost of 120, meaning she'll start with 60 energy. Eidolon 5 and below, Tingyun will grant 50 energy on the battle start, which would take Sele to 110 energy out of 120 energy, meaning she'd have to use a skill or basic first before she can use the ultimate. With Eidolon 6 available to Tingyun though, that changes. Sele will immediately have her ultimate at the start of the fight, meaning that she can ultimate to begin her rotation, which is actually incredibly powerful for Sele due to some very special tricks with that character. And this also will allow Tingyun to further extend out rotations of other characters with very high energy costs and reach very specific breakpoints. Depending on the character that Tingyun is supporting, this could mean the world or it could mean nothing at all. It really depends on the situation in battle and the character you are supporting. But if you want to support specific characters, namely those with 120 energy cost, and you want them to have the biggest and best start possible, this Eidolon is a big step in the right direction and a big buff. When constructing teams with Tingyun, there's not really much to talk about. She is a hyper carry support and she can only really do one job effectively. She can't be played as a pure support, as she loses most of her utility, as she cannot keep the Benediction active while also being a skill point generator to the degree she needs to, so she needs to be in place of a DPS. Some compositions would run 2 damage dealers in these slots, perhaps a Danhang and a Serval, but Tingyun really is a character who needs to replace a DPS, as she wants to run either neutral or slightly skill point positive. However, she more than makes up for that with the skill buffs that she provides, and she can double or even over that the damage of a character. So when you're constructing teams, construct your teams as follows. Have one very strong damaging character. Some good examples of this are Sele, Danhang, Clara, or Yanqing. Have Tingyun herself as the secondary damaging character, pseudo, and then also have 2 supports, namely probably a healer / shielder, and in many cases it's going to be another defensive unit or another skill point generating unit. A good example is the one we've got here. We've got Sele as the hyper carry target, Tingyun as the hyper carry support, Bailu as the healer or sustainer, Natasha would also work great, Japad as a skill point generator who's specializing in defense in this scenario, but you could also use an offensive one like Asta, Bronya, Pella, you name it, you can use it, and that would also be very sufficient in this scenario as well. When considering which characters to pair with Tingyun though, in terms of the damaging role, look for characters who get particularly powerful ultimates. Some good examples of that are Sele and Yanqing, as their ultimates actually provide buffs to them which really empower their rotation, so getting more of them is only going to be even stronger, or characters who hit very frequently and very often with follow-up attacks, similar to something like a Yanqing who gets follow-up attacks very frequently, or Clara who counterattacks very often and can proc her blessing even more. Tingyun is an incredibly accessible character, and honestly for her power level, she feels like she probably should be rarer. But fortunately for us, she is a 4-star, so you can expect to get her as a free-to-play player, and you can also expect to probably pick up some Eidolons for her along the way. Fortunately for us, both the Eidolons and her base form are incredibly strong. She also finds herself very frequently in some of the most powerful teams in endgame right now, and I don't see her viability going anywhere anytime soon. Overall, as a free-to-play player or a paying player, Tingyun is absolutely someone you're going to want on your roster, as she seriously enables some characters and really juices them up to some pretty absurd levels. Overall, I'm pretty happy Tingyun is in the game, and she's as strong as she is, and I think we're going to see a lot of her in the coming patches and overall in Honkai Star Rail's lifetime. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed my Tingyun guide and learned something new, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more character guides. I'm aiming to cover every character in Star Rail eventually, and if you like this guide specifically, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and until next time, hope you guys enjoyed. Cheers.